Hey, Harbor Shores family, hope you all are doing well and having a great week. This past Sunday, Pastor Chris helped us examine the first part of 1 Corinthians chapter 2 as Paul shares how the power of God gives us courage to speak. We looked at how the Apostle Paul preached, what he preached, and why he preached in the way that he did. We then touched on God the Holy Spirit and looked at how the wisdom of the world compares against the wisdom of God. If you did not get the opportunity to watch or listen to the sermon this past Sunday, I totally encourage you to check it out. You can watch it on our website at www.harborshores.org. In the first 5 verses of chapter 2, we see how Paul preached with simplicity, authenticity, and dependency. And I, when I came to you, brothers, did not come proclaiming to you the testimony of God with lofty speech or wisdom. For I decided to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified. And I was with you in weakness and in fear and much trembling. And my speech and my message were not in plausible words of wisdom, but in demonstration of the Spirit and of power, so that your faith might not rest in the wisdom of men, but in the power of God. Now, Paul was not shy to admit of his weaknesses and fears among the Corinthians. You see in verse 3, he said, "And I was with you in weakness, in fear, and in much trembling." It was not uncommon for Paul to acknowledge his weaknesses. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't necessarily enjoy pointing out or recognizing my weaknesses and my fears. And if I do, my first reaction is, how can I fix this? What can Ray do to overcome this area of weakness or fear? Or better yet, what are my recent successes and achievements that I can showcase to people? That's normally what I tend to go to. The area of focus often turns to myself and not in the power and the wisdom of God. But Paul knew better. He knew better than most that it is not human achievements that showcase the grace of God. It is human helplessness. Paul would even go on to share in his second letter to the Corinthians that I will boast of the things that show my weaknesses, 2 Corinthians 11:30. A few verses later, Paul points to his weaknesses from helping him become conceited and why we can be content with his weaknesses. Listen to Paul's testimony of this starting in chapter 12, verses 7 through 10, where he says, "So to keep me from becoming conceited because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations, a thorn was given me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to harass me, to keep me from becoming conceited. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord about this, that it should leave me. But he said to me, 'My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong.'" So why do we as followers of Christ have the utmost confidence to speak from our weaknesses? Here's why. Because God's Spirit, God's power, and God's wisdom are powerfully at work within us. Our weaknesses point us to the grace of God through Christ's redemptive work. They turn our eyes from ourselves and help us to depend on the Lord and look to him. So I leave you with this. The more aware we are of God's grace, the more humble, prayerful, thankful, patient, gracious, content, and joyful we all will be. We will all be more aware of God's grace when we rely on his strength. May we rest in knowing God's grace is sufficient for us, so that his power and wisdom can continually work in us and through us as we continue to share the truth of the gospel. God bless.